This is the third video in the Market Structures series in the IB Microeconomics High Level Only component. In this video, this will be the first part of monopoly as a market structure. So let's just first introduce the assumptions of the model of this market structure or this model. We assume that there's a single or dominant firm in the market. This firm's product has no close substitutes, and there are significant barriers to entry. It's very difficult for new competitors to enter the market. These are the assumptions of the monopoly model or the monopoly market structure. So what are some examples of those barriers to entry that prevent new competitors from entering the market? The first could be that the monopolist has realized very significant economies of scale. Because the monopolist has realized very significant economies of scale, the per unit costs in the long run are very low. And for a new competitor to enter the market, they might not be able to produce at such a low unit cost. Therefore, in this case, the economies of scale act as a barrier to entry. It could be branding. The monopolist has a very well-established brand that consumers are very loyal to. Or it could be legal barriers like patents and copyright and all of these legal barriers that prevent competitors from entering the market. So these are examples of what we mean by barriers to entry, which prevent new competitors from entering the market. Now, if you'll remember earlier when we did the lesson on elasticity, we said that the average revenue curve is the demand curve. Okay, we said that at the midpoint of any straight line demand curve, price elasticity of demand is equal to 1. So demand is unit elastic at the midpoint. Above the midpoint, demand is elastic. Below the midpoint, demand is inelastic. It's very important to remember that a monopolist will never choose to operate on the inelastic portion of its average revenue or demand curve. All of the monopolists' pricing and output decisions will be within the elastic portion of the demand curve. It's very important to remember that. So how does a monopolist decide on what quantity to produce and what price to charge? Let's have a look at the output and pricing decision of a profit-maximizing or loss-minimizing monopolist. A profit-maximizing monopolist will produce a level of output where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. As you can see here, the marginal revenue curve, the red curve, intersects the marginal cost curve at this point. Therefore, if you go down to the horizontal axis, this will give you Q star, which is the profit maximizing output, but then you have to go up to the demand curve to get the profit maximizing price. So this will be the price and this will be the quantity. Be careful. A lot of students would set the price as the price where marginal revenue and marginal cost intersect. That's not the price. That just gives us the profit maximizing quantity, but then you have to go up to the demand curve to get the profit maximizing price that the monopolist will set. As you can see, this profit maximizing price, P star, is within the within the range of output where marginal revenue is positive, which means it is within the range of the demand curve that is elastic, the elastic portion of the demand curve, not the inelastic portion. So let's add the average cost curve and assume that this is a monopolist that is earning an economic profit. Once again, where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost, you go down to the horizontal axis to get the Q star, profit maximizing output. You go up to the demand curve to get the price, and where that line intersects the average cost curve, this will give you the average cost. Now, that box shaded in light purple here, this is the economic profit that the monopolist is earning. Remember, the barriers to entry, because it's very difficult for competitors to enter the market, these barriers to entry allow the monopolist to earn and maintain this abnormal profit or this economic profit. Now, what if this monopolist is making a loss or a negative economic profit? As you can see here, the average cost is higher than the profit maximizing price, and the monopolist is making a loss. Well, if the monopolist is making a loss in the short run, it can either continue operation and try to become more efficient, if it's at least covering its variable costs, or it can shut down temporarily if it cannot cover its variable costs. These are its options in the short run. So continue operation if you're at least covering your variable costs, or shut down temporarily if you cannot cover your variable costs. Now, what about if it's making loss in the long run? Well, the firm would shut down, and because there's only one firm in the market, the industry would cease to exist. So a monopolist cannot really be making a loss in the long run, because what's the point of producing if it's making this loss in the long run? So remember, in the short run, it can either continue or shut down temporarily depending on how much of its variable costs it's covering. Now, you can't say that all monopolists are profit maximizing. There are actually monopolists that are revenue maximizing. So instead of maximizing their profit, they seek to generate the highest level possible of sales. Remember, a revenue maximizing monopolist will produce a level of output where marginal revenue equals 0. So their pricing and output decisions will be slightly different. So instead of producing a level of output where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost, the monopolist will produce, a revenue maximizing monopolist will produce a level of output where marginal revenue intersects the horizontal axis. So this horizontal axis here, this will give you Q star, the profit maximizing output, and then you go up to the demand curve to give you the revenue maximizing price that this revenue maximizing monopolist will charge. So let's have a look at the different pricing and output decisions, or the difference between a profit maximizing monopolist and a revenue maximizing monopolist. So a profit maximizing monopolist is the monopolist that I will label PM. So profit maximizing monopolist will produce this quantity and charge this price. They will produce QPM and charge PPM. Why? Because they produce where marginal revenue and marginal cost intersect. This is what a profit maximizing monopolist would do. They would restrict quantity and raise the price so that the price is higher. A revenue maximizing monopolist will produce QRM and charge PRM. Why? Because they will set the output where marginal revenue is equal to 0, where the marginal revenue curve intersects the horizontal axis, and then they would set a lower price. And this is the difference between a profit maximizing and a revenue maximizing monopolist.